Remember, the course catalog said Philosophy 101 looks at standard questions philosophers have studied about knowledge, reality, and morality, right? And so that's really the three divisions of our class. Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3 of the book. Part 1 covers epistemology. Now, that's a big word, and you'll get to learn these kinds of words. I call them party words because it's nice to learn them and then drop them at parties and you sound sophisticated and impress people. So epistemology is one of them. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. How do we know? And we'll start there. Makes sense to start with that. If we can't know anything, should we continue? No. So we'll decide. Basically, we'll spend the first few weeks deciding if we should even go on in class or life. Should we continue on? Can we know things? And then Part 2, metaphysics, another good one. Although this is a more common word than epistemology in colloquial speech, and therefore not as good because people might think you're speaking of something of which you're not. There are sometimes metaphysics sections at the bookstore. So you go to Barnes & Noble and you'll find the metaphysics section. And in that section you can learn how to astral project, how to channel energy with crystals, how to become one with the universal consciousness. And that's not metaphysics as we're studying it. It's a name coming from the works of Aristotle. He had a book on physics, and then he had a book on things like being and causality. And it came, as they arranged his books, after physics. So you know what they named it? The after-physics, the metaphysics. Right? So that's what we're studying in physics is what is real? And you see the order. How do I know? And then I want to know what is real, not what isn't real. How have you been doing in learning what is real? Have you been able to distinguish between real? That's essentially the job of a librarian. I know someone who wants to be a librarian. And that's basically what you do as a librarian, right? You're at the librarian desk, and books come in, and you either put them in the fiction section or the nonfiction section, right? Reality or not reality. And that's your job all day. You're doing metaphysics. Wouldn't that be wonderful to get paid to do metaphysics all day? Library job. So we'll look at different theories about what is real. And you might find yourself in these theories. You might find out that you're a material monist. You might find out you're a theist. And then Part 3, ethics. The catalog used the word morality. For our purposes, those are the same thing. Sometimes those are divided as different. Ethics asks this question: what is good? And I was getting at that earlier when I was talking to Brittany and then Sophia and Vilma, asking you questions aiming towards, say you have this goal. Why are you in this class? To get this degree. Why do you want a degree? To get a job. Why do you want a job? To get money. Why do you want money? I'm asking you about your choices and your goals to highlight the fact that we do have goals. And the good is the highest goal. What is our highest goal? We haven't really figured out yet. The good. The thing that you want above all else. So we'll be going in that order. How do I know what is real and what is good? And we could say it this way: I want to know what is real so I could choose what is good. And if you make a mistake at any of those levels, it will throw you off of that. So for example, the job of unicorn wrangler. Would you like to take a degree in being a unicorn wrangler? I prefer not to. You're like Bartleby the Scrivener. Leprechaun hunter. In real life, Sam and Dean would be kind of losers, right? Out of work. It only works in fiction. Not to mention, they seem to fund their hunting with identity theft, which is already problematic, right? So you want to know what is real so you can choose what is good. If your life goal is to have a herd of unicorns, do you have a herd of unicorns or a flock of unicorns? Probably a herd. then you won't ever achieve your life goal. It's not based on reality. So what if you're one of these persons who think there's God, and we all know there is no God, and you spend your life pursuing God? Does it turn out there isn't one? Wouldn't that be too bad? Oh, I'm getting looks. So you say it could be the other way, Anderson. You spend your life thinking there is no God, and then it turns out there is God. And the empiricists will say, I'm going to wait and see at death. But it might be how you lived then affects what happens, right? So it's not a good approach. So the contents, how do I know, and what is real, and what is good? Now in the preface it says this, philosophy is needed by all, so this book is written for all. Do you think that's true? Philosophy is needed by all? Or just those who need humanities credits? You know that Socrates never earned any humanities credits? So I'm going to ask you to think about that. Why is philosophy needed by all? And it says, it is written for those who are beginning to think deeply about basic things, and for those who have wandered in the labyrinth for a while. So both those who are beginning and those who have been wandering for a while can benefit from the book. And it's written for those who have been avoiding this subject of philosophy for good and for bad reasons. So we'll be investigating here our answers to the most basic questions we can ask. Can we know anything? What is ultimately real? And what ought I to do? How do I pursue what is good? Now you might ask, why another book on the subject? Is there really anything new under the sun? And if we can learn from the past, if we can learn from challenges and conflicts, if we can learn from our suffering, then we become more conscious and more consistent in what we think and do. So that's why another book. There's more to reflect on, and there's things we need to learn. There's challenges that have come up since the last book that we need to reflect on and learn from. And you can ask yourself this, are you able to learn from your suffering? Or do you waste your suffering? A book or a short story I'm going to have us read is Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich. And you'll get to see, does Ivan waste his suffering? Now, the beginning of the book has a detailed outline. Then we get to the beginning of the book, part 1, Epistemology. It starts this way. Some things are clear. We're going to start epistemology that way and start today. Some things are clear. Second, we're going to go in order. The basic things are clear. Third, the basic things about God and man and good and evil are clear to reason. So we go in that order and think about why we even start that way. Why start by saying some things are clear? Well, what's the alternative? Nothing is clear? That's called philosophical skepticism. I should say this, that skepticism is an ambiguous word. It could mean multiple things. In philosophy, it means the claim, no knowledge is possible. Sometimes when you're out there, what it means is something more like, I want proof, I'm skeptical, and that's a very healthy thing to want. So that's a good kind of skeptic. Say, I want proof. But in philosophy, it means someone who's already concluded knowledge is not possible. So that's the next paragraph. Skepticism denies that some things are clear, which means it says the opposite. Not that some things aren't clear, because those could both be true. Some things are clear, some things aren't clear. The opposite of some things are clear is nothing is clear. And if nothing is clear, this includes any distinctions we make between A and non-A. Those are abstract variables. So fill those in. Between being and non-being. Are those clearly different? Now, you might not know in a given instance which is which, but they are different, and the job then is to assign which is which, like being and non-being. How about true and false? Are those different? Clearly different? Yeah. When you ask a question, you want a true answer? There's a famous case of this where someone was told or asked this question, what is the truth? Or what, sorry, I shouldn't say that, not the, what is truth itself? And they got no answer. Why wouldn't you answer that question? Well, if the person asking you doesn't know how to differentiate between true and not true, what kind of answer are they looking for? Right? A true answer or a false answer? So if nothing is clear, we don't know the difference between true and false. How about good and not good or evil? Are those clearly different? Would you ever be satisfied with evil instead of good? No. So consistently held, skepticism leads to nihilism, the loss of all meaning. Nihilism means there is no meaning. And I mentioned this character a moment ago, Ivan Illich, we'll be looking at, and that's what his suffering pressed him to. When he realized the bad part of suffering is not the suffering. The bad part is that it might be meaningless. Wouldn't that be awful? It's awful to suffer. Wouldn't it be even worse to suffer and it's meaningless? Nihilism. No meaning. So think about how we got there. This is the first point in class, first day, so therefore the keystone. Some things are clear. Basic things are clear. Think about how knowledge works. We build on things, right? We build, as we know, we start with the most basic. You start with ABCs, right? You guys, look at you. You're very brilliant, so we're going to start with Tolstoy. But do you start with Tolstoy in kindergartner? With a kindergartner? No. He's still working on, wait, A is different than B? I thought those were the same. Right? So he's getting those things down, and then you keep going. You build up from there, right? What was I working on last night? I was working on, last night, adjectival predicates. Do you know what an adjectival predicate is? This was with a fourth grader, working on those. So he's building it. He knows his ABCs, and now he's on adjectival predicates. That's good. He's building up. He's moving along. Pretty soon he'll be on Tolstoy. So we start with building knowledge, and if the basic things aren't clear, will the other things be clear? If the ABCs aren't clear, will Tolstoy be clear? If we don't know if an A is an A or a non-A, will we get through any works of literature? No. So that's what it means to say some things are clear, the basic things are clear. And this should be clear to you. I spend time on it because some people actually stumble on it. It's very rare, and it's usually persons who are recalcitrant for other personal reasons. Because it's clear. Some things are clear. We couldn't get past kindergarten otherwise. And it's the basic things, and then it defines the basic things. I've been using an example from English class. A is A, then grammar, parts of sentences, and then literature. But this says the basic things about God and man, and good and evil, are clear to reason. And so we'll see why that covers metaphysics and ethics and epistemology right there, right? The basic things about being, good and evil, morality, are clear to reason, epistemology, as opposed to they're not clear, or as opposed to they're clear to something else, like I have an inner feeling. Or someone might say, I know God by experience. I was going over to the vending machine, and I came around kind of fast around the corner, and I bumped into. I was like, oh, hey, God, there you are. So that's how I know God's there. I bumped into him at the vending machine. So that's experience, and you have to interpret your experience, right? If you can bump into him, it wasn't God. So you've misinterpreted your experience. So we don't know by experience or intuition. Those are sometimes called non-cognitive. Cognitive means dealing with propositions or beliefs, and you put beliefs together. For example, God and exists, and you put them together. Or you deny they go together. God exists, they go together. Or God does not exist, they don't go together. So knowledge is propositional or cognitive. Feelings or emotions or experiences aren't yet cognitive. It's when you reflect on them and form beliefs about them, then those beliefs are cognitive, right? So this is not any evaluation. It's not to say one's better than the other. Just to describe these are two different parts of our human experience, right? Of human reality. And we're not going to just stop at the experience level, because what happens is people have experiences and they need to interpret them. And that's what we do in philosophy. We think of the different interpretations for these experiences. Was it God, or was it Brahman, or was it niacin? What was the experience caused by? So basic things are clear to reason. Reason is the first thing we're going to talk about in class. What is reason? After this, after going into what is philosophy, then we'll go into what is reason. It's not the same as human reasoning or reasons or rationalizations. Reason itself has to do with what is thought. So what it's saying is some things are clear about basic things to reason, the laws of thought. So we'll get into what these mean, but I want to see if you're following that, what we're going to be studying this semester. Very basic stuff. And I remember one class, one semester, before I was familiar with these terms. You have to help old guys like me out. One student said something in class. Another student said to him, but Anderson's more basic. And that student said, oh. I said, well, why are you doing that? He's right. I am basic. And they, no, Anderson, you don't understand. There's another sense of what basic means, right? But even then, it's capturing the sense of it, right? Fundamental, not a lot of other things, right? The simple, basic, the starting point. So that's what we're going to do in 101. We're going to be at the starting point. And I'm kind of proud of that sense of being basic, right? That's okay. Some things are clear at that basic level about God and man and good and evil. And we'll talk about how we pick those terms to reason.